Moments ago, the defense wrapping up its closing argument in the Sean Diddy Combs trial. The prosecution will now give a rebuttal, and just a little bit ago, the judge made clear that the jury is likely going to get the case on Monday instead of today. Combs is facing 5 criminal counts and faces up to life in prison if convicted of the most serious charges against him. He's pleaded not guilty to all the charges. Defense and trial attorney Misty Marris joins us now for some perspective. Misty, where did the defense seem to think it had the best opportunity in their closing?
So first of all, I was in court today, Boris, and I observed the defense closing argument being stylistically very, very different than the prosecution yesterday. Prosecutors stood behind a podium, had slides, compared the evidence to the elements of the legal charge, very almost educational to a certain degree, telling the jury why they should find Sean Combs guilty. The defense, completely different. They told a story, a narrative about Combs and his personal relationships with Cassie Ventura and Jane. They also closed very strongly, focusing on the lack of evidence of a criminal conspiracy to support the RICO charge, pointing out that Combs is the only individual who's being prosecuted, and there are no other co-conspirators that prosecutors put on the stand. Where I also thought they were particularly effective is, remember, they didn't put on a case, no witnesses from the defense. So they utilized evidence that came in during the prosecution's case, including witness testimony, which tends to undermine the prosecution's theories to create reasonable doubt. All in all, the defense did a very good job of telling that story, something that may stick in the jury's mind.
I wonder, Misty, how do you think jury instructions might alter the course of their decision making? Is there anything that could perhaps sway them?
Oh, Boris, the jury instructions are really something that's going to be of critical importance, and they are in every single case. But here, when you're talking about complex charges, especially RICO conspiracy, as well as what we know are the predicate crimes. So to explain, prosecutors have to prove that there is a conspiracy to commit racketeering activity, which are crimes in furtherance of a criminal enterprise. And there's 11 predicate crimes that are going to be listed in those jury instructions. So just talking about it right now, it is a lot to digest. And that's just one charge. Then we also have sex trafficking, as well as Mann Act transportation to engage in prostitution. So listen, it is complicated. And that's why closing arguments are so important. When the jury hears the jury instructions, which the judge will read on Monday now, both sides want the jury to be thinking about their narrative of the case and looking at those elements through what they've presented and what those final words were to the jury in closing to tie it all together. So look, the jury instructions are very, very complex. I think it's going to take a while for the jurors to work through them, but certainly it could be something that impacts the way the jury decides the case.
How much precedent do you think is riding on whatever verdict the jury comes back with?
Well, in a case like this, we're talking about the jury who's going to make a question about guilt or innocence. So all of the legal arguments about whether or not these charges should have been thrown out, whether or not evidence should have come in or out, all of those are going to be appellate issues. Right now, the jury is the decider of fact, meaning they decide what happens. They weigh the credibility of the witnesses. They'll decide whether or not they're going to disregard some witness testimony, whether they found witnesses to be truthful or not truthful, and also weigh the evidence, meaning what evidence do they feel is more important with respect to the charges. So the jury here, they're going to speak. I've been in court. For people that have been watching this trial, there are a lot of diametrically different opinions. In my view, this jury is going to have a lot of work to do when they get in that jury room.
Misty Marris, thank you so much for keeping track of it for us.